Today I'm going to show you how the Vikings could sign Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Danielle Hunter, and a whole bunch of top shelf free agents. Haters, doubters, doomers, eat it. Play the intro.
You like that? 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for listening to this show every single day. My hashtag everydayers. I appreciate y'all so very much. If you're new here, hello, my name is Luke. This is going to be kind of a tradition on this show that we've done every year since I took it over on kind of a bunch of like very extremified cap options just to show the range of dynamic outcomes that you can do depending on your goals. And I'm excited if you're here for the first time and you're seeing it. And if you're an everyday, I appreciate y'all very, very much. You can, of course, find this show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is a podcast listening place like SiriusXM and SiriusXM app, where you can also find hometown broadcasts for any sports team. Just search it out on the app. You can also find the show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, here's how this is going to work. Okay, so this is going to be an episode of a cap exercise. We are going to do an entire, call it a mock free agency, sort of. There are a lot of dynamic market factors and stuff that I'm not going to pay attention to. I'm not very good at projecting contracts. I'm just going to go be a slave to PFF Brad Spielberger, and just use his contract projections. I can't say hometown discount. I can't say any lower. I can't say any higher, right? That seems fair. I'm going to impose a few other rules on myself, and including the goals here. So the goal of this exercise is not just to show you this pie in the sky, totally impossible free agency situation where the Vikings sign all the players, because nobody ever signs as many players as I'm going to do in this exercise. The goal is to show my work a little bit when I say that the answer to the question that I get all the time, that I see all the time, and I see people be wrong about all the time, is, the question is, can the Vikings sign Kirk Cousins, Danielle Hunter, and Justin Jefferson? Of course they can. And if you don't think that they can, you probably just haven't been listening to Locked On Vikings for long enough, which you can fix that. All right? You are fixing that, so I love you. But also that they can sign a lot of free agencies and still be really active in the market after bringing those guys in because of the way that they've sort of handled their salary cap. They really gutted the roster last year, and that was the cost. And the defense needing to make up a new scheme to be successful was the cost. Now we get the benefit. And then the last stipulation here, no restructuring contracts, no void years. We're not doing any of this stuff. I mean, you can do and all of that stuff. That's still all very much an option for the Vikings and could even be a smart one. But for the purposes of this, nope. Not doing it. Not going to push any cap down the road that I don't have to. I can play with contract structures and backload things and try to weight things for inflation and all that, but no void years, no restructures. So the biggest deal here is Kirk Cousins. What do we do with Kirk Cousins, right? And I don't want this to be an episode about the decision to sign Kirk Cousins or not. That's a lot more about his play and a lot less about the cap. Today we're doing the cap. And I don't think it would quite be a fair cap challenge if I allowed myself to let Kirk walk and make it easy like that, right? If you don't pay another dollar to him, this whole thing is a whole lot easier. Even though a lot of salary stuff accelerates into this year, you don't have any extra in 2025 or 2026. So everything gets mega easy if you let him walk. Let's challenge ourselves and let's keep him to a 1-year deal. I must do at least a 1-year deal for Kirk Cousins. I can do more if I feel that's appropriate, but spoiler alert, I'm not gonna. But let's just force that. And if you don't want to keep Kirk, then just understand it gets even easier. I also must extend Danielle Hunter and I must extend Justin Jefferson. Again, that's kind of part of the exercise. If you let all the guys walk and then say, look, I can sign a bunch of free agents, that doesn't really take you anywhere, right? So we've got to do that. I also must solve the following roster holes. I need a second tier edge rusher and a third tier edge rusher. I need defensive tackle opposite Harrison Phillips that can sort of be a Batman and Robin thing. I also want a third defensive tackle for base packages and for rotational work. I need a Jordan Hicks replacement. I want to add another cornerback to that defense and just add an extra kind of piece of competition. There are a lot of young guys that stepped up and did okay last year, but I want to add another like bona fide name to that cornerback room, and then we can have competition elsewhere. I've also talked a lot about these positions in the past, in previous episodes in more detail about like where I think those rooms are at and stuff. So if you're interested in that, you can go find those episodes. On the offensive side of the ball, of course, we need Kirk, we need JJ, we need a running back one. Alexander Madison's still on the team, but I want to get somebody to either replace him or at least compete with him. We need a guard, whether that's Dalton Reisner or somebody else, and we need somebody to replace KJ Osborne as wide receiver 3. Those are the goals, right? And there are some other things, like maybe you want like a low tier tight end to start the first 6 games in case TJ Hawkinson's not ready and stuff, but there's some minor stuff around. I don't have a kicker in this simulation, that kind of thing. But I think those are the major needs, right? And what I want is to solve all of them in free agency so that you can get to the draft and do whatever you want. That's the deal. That's not realistic. Most teams will say we'll do a couple of these in free agency and we'll sort of leave some needs for the draft where we feel we're going to have a good chance, right? And I think that's a much more efficient way to navigate things, but we're doing a bit of a stress test here. So we're going to be a little bit stupid on purpose just to see how far we can push the envelope. Cool? So I am going to show you now an over the cap calculator projection that I just did. And there's a million green little lines on it. And then I'll open up a fresh one and redo it in front of you so I can show you all of my work and you can audit me if you want. Let's get into it. As always, if you're an audio listener and you can't see the visual aids here, first off, I recommend watching this episode instead of listening to it if that's something that is available to you. But if you're in the car or whatever and you can't, don't worry. I will be as descriptive as possible. I'll say all the numbers, but a lot of numbers are going to fly around. It might be hard to track. Visual aid might help you if you can. So to start here, I want to do the big names. I want to do Justin Jefferson, Danielle Hunter, and Kirk Cousins. We'll start with Kirk Cousins. Now, again, I'm sort of forcing this issue here, and I will force a 1-year contract. All right, a 1-year extension. We're not doing 2 years. We're not doing the 3 years fully guaranteed that a lot of people still fear, even though it's kind of been reported that that's not going to be the case. We're going to do 1 year, call it a bridge, and then we get to be as aggressive or not aggressive as we want for a quarterback. We're not forced into taking a guy we don't really like because we just won't have anybody but Jaron Hall on the team. And he still walks at the end. So this has to be a $35 million deal per our contract stipulations. I'm going to do $20 million in signing bonus. I'm going to do $15 million in salary. That gives him a nice, responsible $30.2 million cap number. That ain't nothing nowadays for a quarterback, by the way. And he will still have like a big dead cap hit in 2025. Now, for the way that this actually works, I actually have to sort of set up a little bit differently. So again, if you're looking at it, this is how the contract will actually look, but it won't properly, the way the calculator is built up, it won't properly factor in the dead cap after his contract voids in 2025. He's already got the void years. So what I'm going to do is sort of simulate that and enter in different numbers that make that an actual proper simulation of how the cap numbers will work. So we have the right numbers to work with. So that'll be a $33 million dead cap hit in 2025. And we'll deal with that. But as you will see, we're going to be all right with it. We can still work around that. Let's go to Justin Jefferson, another contract that has kind of, maybe the value of it has gone up. I've heard now I'm starting to see $150 million, which could be a 5-year number, which would actually be a low 5-year number. Let's call it 33.5 per year. 33.5 per year on a 4-year contract extension. As I've done in previous episodes, I had it scale up slightly to sort of predict for cap inflation and sort of do this more as a percentage of cap thing. I did a $17 million signing bonus. If you want more on this, you can listen to the previous episode where I worked this out like kind of in real time and in terms of like what will guarantee and what won't. I'm not going to fill any of that out here, but suffice to say, I'm guaranteeing the first 3 years of the contract, and the Wilfs can figure out how to get the funds liquid. Next up, we have Danielle Hunter. He's going to get a 3-year deal worth $60 million or $65 million total, with, again, a sort of escalating structure, trying to replicate what Rob Brzezinski has done in the past. So with that, we've now signed our 3 guys, and we have a cap space total of $40 million in 2024 and $47 million in 2025. If that sounds impossible to you, you haven't been listening to Locked On Vikings enough. We've got other guys that we want to keep on the roster that are leaving in free agency. Most of them are like incredibly cheap, so we'll go over those guys next, and then we'll go over a whole myriad of free agents. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and it is such for a reason. That's because if you are new, you can get access to all kinds of fun promos all over FanDuel, whether you're new or not. But if you're new, you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins, but you can bet on any heavy favorite that you want to make sure that you get that 30-1 on your $5 bet. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Find your favorite among spreads, player props, even live same game parlays, all kinds of crazy stuff that you can find at FanDuel.com/lockedon, and make sure that you win that $5 bet to get $150 in bonus bets. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Next up, I want to do the free agents that are coming up, and there are a few that are pretty easy in terms of the transaction. There's Nick Muse, who is an exclusive rights free agent, and TJ Smith. Both of those guys are exclusive rights free agents. It's the same deal as Theo Jackson. They basically get like bang on minimum deals to come back. I think it's a total no-brainer to do that for those two guys and see if they can't make the team. There's also Blake Brandel, who's a restricted free agent, so we can put an original round tender on him, which will cost about $3 million for him to come back on a 1-year deal. And if somebody wants to beat that, they can. But the Vikings still get first right of refusal in terms of matching it. We're going to click that same button on Cam Akers, who will also only cost $3 million on 1 season of cap. So that just like signs a whole bunch of depth needs for us, and it helps us get a more realistic simulation. I'm also going to bring back Brandon Powell, who has only ever made the veteran minimum, and his veteran minimum this year is $1.125 million. I think we can bring him back on the same deal and say, come on back. Maybe he'll ask for like $2 million or something like that. But since he's only ever signed the minimums, I feel like it's fair to click him in for the minimum. And we're going to do the same thing with Austin Schlottman, backup center. So we're actually filling out depth and a real roster here to try to make sure that we're not being overly optimistic about how much cap space there is. I really want this to be as like difficult as possible. I'm also going to bring back Jonathan Bullard on a $2.5 million deal. There is no cap projection for him on any of the websites. I haven't seen anything, so I don't really know what to click in terms of money for him, but I clicked 2.5 mil. I figured that's like fair enough. It's lower than the amounts that did get on like the PFF free agency list. So I feel like that's fair enough. And maybe I'm missing really bad on that one. That's okay. These are all kind of on the margins. The only other free agent I'm going to bring back from the 2023 Vikings is going to be Dalton Reisner. I think this is a pretty popular move for a lot of people. Now, PFF is giving him a 3-year, $8 million a year contract. So 3 for $24 million total. And I was pretty lazy about it. I didn't do any backloading or front loading. I just did 888 just to kind of keep things rolling on this. But keep in mind that I actually did that for like for all the free agent contracts, and then just went back and revisited the ones I needed to do serious structures for so that I could fit in some of the more egregiously luxurious free agents. So now we've brought back a lot of people and we've solved a few problems. We've gotten our guard, we've gotten one of our D tackles, we've gotten, I'm not calling Brandon Powell wide receiver 3, but he's depth that needs to come back. And then of course we did the Hunter Jefferson Cousins thing that we had to do. And we've gotten some backups in terms of, running back, tight end, backup guard and Brandel and all that stuff. All of those things are important on the margins, not what we're talking about, but that has chewed up a little bit of our cap space. We're down to 26 mil for the 2024 season, 26 and a half. And we're down to 39 mil for the 2025 season. Most of that is comprised of Reisner. A lot of these contracts you got to remember are, for example, Nick Muse or TJ Smith, very cheap contracts. And if say, Nick Muse makes the team, but Johnny Munt does not, who actually I am also bringing back Johnny Munt on a $2.5 million deal. Let's say Nick Muse beats out Johnny Munt in camp. I don't think anybody would predict it, but it wouldn't be we've seen certainly stranger things. Well, that actually kind of saves you some money on the cap too, right? Oh, and then I forgot in all of this flurry of names, I am projecting a Harrison Smith retirement. If Harrison Smith doesn't retire, a lot of this changes, but I kind of feel like he's going to retire. And if he doesn't, then he actually becomes a cap casualty candidate, maybe, if you feel good about your safeties, if you want to do that. So I'm just going to say Harrison Smith retires and let's just go with that and move forward. That's kind of what I've been penciling in for all of these. So I'd have to like change the whole way I've been talking about it if that doesn't happen, which could be fine, but it would make me redo a lot of work and I don't want to do that. So, okay, on to the free agents. Oh, nope. Forgot another one. Marcus Davenport. He can be our sort of defensive end too. We can go back to Hunter and Davenport. We'll see if he stays healthy this time. I've talked about this at length in another episode. He's worth a $5 million deal because of the way that void years move around. It actually doesn't really change a lot. You take $5 million off of the 2025 cap. By the way, with Harrison Smith gone, that saved us a whole bunch. We're now back up to $36 million for 2024 and $59 million for 2025. Because of the way because we're accelerating all of Harrison Smith's dead cap up to now. We're taking that whole hit now, and he's been promised a lot of unguaranteed salary that he is not going to see. That's still reflected on the cap websites. So even if Harrison Smith does stay, there's probably pay cuts and stuff. I feel like this is going to be a more realistic interpretation. One thing I'm not doing is restructuring Brian O'Neill or TJ Hawkinson, which are, I think, reasonable ideas. I'm just going to click the buttons here real quick on the cap website, just so we can see what happens there. If you clicked max restructure on both of those guys, you get $53 million this year and $53 million next year, which is, I mean, it's a ton of money, right? It's not going to be necessary, so I will undo those, and now we can move on to the actual free agency, right? Oh my God, did I forget anybody else? No, I don't think I forgot anything else. Okay, free agent time. I have a lot of really fun names on here, but I'm going to start with the ones that I've already discussed on previous shows. In terms of why I like these guys, but we'll focus on just the cap for them right now. But I really like DJ Reader. I have loved DJ Reader for a long time. I think him for the defensive tackle next to Harrison Phillips. Absolutely adore that idea. And I've done a signing bonus of $10 million and then tried to kind of escalate his contract up to backload it a little bit into 2026. This is one I kind of needed to fiddle with so that I could fit the weirdest things in here, but it's definitely not a necessary move if you want to be a little more responsible in free agency than I was. But signing DJ Reader in total, really easy to figure out. Next up, let's do Chidobe Awuzie. Let's stay with the Bengals. He's going to be my corner. I like Chidobe Awuzie. I love what he did in Cincinnati in the last year. He was kind of coming off of an injury, doing a prove it thing. To be frank, I think he stays in Cincinnati, but not in this simulation. That's not something I'm paying any mind to. And honestly, if you don't like Chidobe Awuzie, apply the same contract to a corner you do feel this way about, right? So I actually turned his whole first year into a signing bonus and then went with the PFF projection. For DJ Reader, it was 15 and a quarter per year. For Awuzie, it's 10.5 mil a year. So I'm doing that. And those are the only major backloads that I believe that I did. Maybe there's one other one that I'm forgetting about. And there's some backloading stuff done with the other moves, like with Hunter, Jefferson, Cousins. I did a little bit of backloading there. But as you can see, I still have plenty of space in 2025. I'm still well over 100 mil for 2026. I'm not borrowing a ton from the future or kicking any cap down the road with restructures, all of which are buttons you can press at any moment if you do find yourself in any trouble for future things, which we'll kind of get to at the end there. But let's move on. The next one is going to be, we're going to do some smaller stuff, and then we'll end with the big kahuna, which is a name that's probably sticking out to you like a sore thumb on this if you are watching. But let's do Blake Cashman next. I actually, for linebackers, I really like Jordan Brooks, like a lot. Blake Cashman had a really nice year in Houston. This is a bit more of a high-risk signing to go a little bit cheapo. This is the only one where I didn't get the guy that I really, really like. And I kind of went to my second tier. But I figure out linebacker that's at least excusable. And look, man, I did some other really irresponsible stuff I don't actually have to do here. And I don't think there's anything wrong with Cashman. In terms of a Jordan Hicks replacement, he's almost exactly the same, like height and weight and stuff, and the athleticism's the same, and he's a little bit better in coverage. So I could see this being definitely the thing that works out. You just got to hope that last year wasn't a flash in the pan and that you're paying for a peak, right? I actually ended up front loading it a little bit because in some of the process of putting this all together, I ended up backloading too much stuff and realized, oh my God, I've given myself way more 2024 space than I need, and I've borrowed too much from the future. So let's just sort of retroactively, let's retcon a little bit, and we'll front load this Blake Cashman deal and sort of steal a little bit back from the immediate future to sort of pay a little bit more debt off than I need to. So little quick check here. We've got DJ Reader, Chidobe Awuzie, and Blake Cashman, plus all the re-signings and extensions and stuff that I did. We are down to 19 mil in cap space and 26 mil in cap space next year, or 26.9. So 27 mil in cap space next year. 2026 is at 127 mil in cap space projected, although I don't know how good those projections are 2 years in the future. It could be way higher than that. So now we're starting to get a little bit tighter. The other rule that I have here that I forgot to mention is that I want close-ish to 10 mil in 2024, so I have room for draft picks and stuff. I will end up, you can see it in the in the completed thing, I will end up about $1 million below that. And I think that's okay because I'm kind of planning to trade up like crazy for a quarterback. So I don't think there's going to be a ton of rookie contracts. It's a little bit tight in terms of contingency and stuff. But as you can tell, I've also haven't really optimized this perfectly. I bet you I could squeeze a little bit. I could probably squeeze 4 or 5 million more out of this if I like really sat down and tried. But this is just a thought exercise. We don't need to go that hard. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is therapy online made easy. And whether it is trying to cope with the anxiety of whatever the latest Justin Jefferson rumor is, which I'm not going to talk about today, or anything else going on in your life, maybe something that's a little bit more material, therapy can be a great resource for helping you through that kind of thing, or just helping you get through the day-to-day, or just keeping tabs on your mental health, which is important even if nothing's wrong. So head on over to betterhelp.com/lockedon. You get 10% off of your first month. Personally, I've been in therapy for a long time. I think it's a really helpful thing. I think it's a really important thing. Maintenance on your mental health just as important as maintenance on your physical health. It's like exercising. You got to do it. So try to get started with BetterHelp, and they'll help you get hooked up with somebody that's right for you, a therapist that's right for you and your personality type and your needs. And if it doesn't work, you can just try a new one. They'll help you get through all of that. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Next up is another one that I did forget about that I kind of backloaded, but it's one I've talked about a lot on this show. It's Dorrance Armstrong. He's kind of become my placeholder for my stand-in like name for get an edge rusher that you're trying to find a bargain on. And I do think that he represents a bargain, Dorrance Armstrong. He's a Cowboys edge rusher, been buried behind Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. And he's been really efficient when he's come on the field, and he just hasn't had that many opportunities. We're going to give him those opportunities. He gets $8.5 million a year. I turned as much as I could of that first year into signing bonus to try to like backload a little bit. And then I'm going to escalate things just a little bit more because it's not particularly realistic to have contracts that are the exact same base salary every single year. They usually scale a little bit because you expect the cap to inflate. So we'll do something that works under those constraints. I'm also going to add a wide receiver 3 candidate. You can kind of name a whole bunch of these guys. I went with Nick Westbrook-Akine. If you don't like that name, that's fine. You can put in like any number of those guys. PFF has him with a $3.5 million contract. There's like 60 million guys that could be 3.5 mil on a wide receiver 3. So put in whatever name you want, but we got to account for that on the cap. And then the pièce de résistance, the dumbest thing that I did in this is sign Saquon Barkley for a $12.25 million a year. There is absolutely no reason that this is necessary, but I'm doing it because it's very fun. You could get a whole bunch of running backs for way, way, way cheaper than this, and I did it. Now, I entered one of these things wrong. I didn't perfectly replicate my thing from before. I did Danielle Hunter's thing wrong, so let me just quick fix what I did wrong there. I had actually backloaded Danielle Hunter's contract a lot more than I said at the beginning, so this is how that works now. And then I still got something weirdly wrong. I don't actually know what I didn't replicate perfectly, but that's all right because this actually looks better. I've got $8 million in cap space in 2024. Hopefully that's enough. If not, we can, probably retouch a couple little things here and there. We can dip into the restructure pool if we really feel we need to, or we can just do a couple of these contracts a little less lazy. We have 10 mil for 2025. We also don't have any needs for 2025 really, because a lot of these contracts, like a lot of the money that we took from 2025 are people under contract for 2025. We don't have any void years or dead cap. We don't have a dime of dead cap in 2025. All of this in 2025 is people who are actually, we do have some void years that are still left over from Dean Lowry and Byron Murphy. I actually didn't think about cutting Dean Lowry, but hey, you know what? It makes it harder to not do any cap casualties, except for Harrison Smith, who I'm projecting a retirement for. Is kind of different. So you'll still have some of the void year stuff that the Vikings have gotten before I got my paws into this thing, but we still have a lot of roster flexibility here. I'm sure some of these free agent contracts won't work out, right? Maybe you don't like Blake Cashman after 1 year and you cut him, or Dorrance Armstrong didn't, explode like I'm kind of betting on him to, and you cut him for cap space or whatever. You make something else happen. Maybe a draft pick hits really hard and you don't need a guy and you can cut him and save money, or you want to restructure some contracts. I mean, pick your choose here. You can do whatever you want. And you have all of your cap flexibility back. You can go into this restructure thing and basically start over, and you can have a 10-year runway where you can do this over and over and over again before it starts to catch up to you. So there you go. I fixed the cap. I fixed the Vikings. It's doable. Hopefully I've addressed most of your issues. Anything else that comes up is not going to come up this offseason. If anything, it'll be next offseason. For example, I have not included anything about Christian Darrisaw in there. Christian Darrisaw's 5th-year option is coming up. It's going to be like 16 mil. The deadline to exercise that is May 2nd. It's almost certain that the Vikings will. And that'll put the Vikings over for 2025 on this plan that I did. So a couple things on that. For one, incredibly solvable problem. You can solve that via an extension of his and get that cap hit down for the year and do the backload thing that I've done with most of these, which is pretty common practice. You backload every single contract so that every year your cap is made of the 3rd year and 4th year of contracts, which are bigger, and then a whole bunch of smaller 1st years of contracts. And so long as you have some players on their 1st year and some on their 2nd and 3rd and 4th, you're going to find a reasonable balance there. So that's one way you can do it. You can also not go insane on free agents, but I wanted to stress test, right? Like, there are just some guys you do not need to sign to 3-year deals here on this. You don't need to go this hard. The Vikings won't go this hard. This is a very unrealistic simulation to prove a point. You can also not necessarily have Kirk Cousins, right? That'll put $30 more million into 2025 that you didn't have before. And that'll just solve that problem and then some for you. So you can also do all that, or you could break my other rules and restructure guys, or start to restructure guys, or start to cut guys like Dean Lowry that you don't necessarily need, and make stuff a lot easier on that. Either way, however you want to solve that problem, the thing that I've done here is I've made all kinds of flexibility. The Vikings can get out from under whatever cap problems you think I created here with the click of a button, and they don't need to negotiate that at all. With restructures and signing bonus and stuff, the only time you need the player to say yes is if you're adding void years, and there's not really a reason for them to say no to that unless they're really worried about becoming a non-compensatory free agent later. But that won't even happen most of the time, and unless you're like shortening the deals themselves. So, which by the way applies to both Kirk Cousins and Danielle Hunter. If they do walk and hit free agency, the Vikings are eligible for comp picks, assuming they actually make money. So that's a problem that you can fix. And there's obviously the issue of maybe needing to nickel and dime another couple million. But again, I probably could have been a little less lazy about some of those contracts and could have figured it out. This is hopefully enough to assuage the concerns of anybody that says that the Vikings cannot keep Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and Danielle Hunter. If you hear someone say that, honestly, you can't trust them on the cap, because the Vikings can. It's incredibly easy to. The money is not going to be an issue here at all. It's going to be a negotiation, and it's going to be about what the Vikings value those players at. Not necessarily can they afford to do. They can do it all if they want, but do they want to? And if they let those guys walk, it's not because they couldn't afford it. It's because they didn't want to. That's what I really want you to take home. It's because they did it. If they let Danielle Hunter walk, it's because they didn't want Danielle Hunter. And if he goes to the Bears and gets 10 sacks on us, then we deserve that, because it's an unforced error. I'm pretty into keeping those players. I think they're really, really important to the core of the team and to making a team. Whatever the new build of the team is going to be, probably good to build it around those guys. I mean, Jefferson and Hunter, pretty good players, right? Obviously, Kirk Cousins is a more short-term proposition, but the other two, pretty good players. I'd build my team around him. I don't know. We'll see here. Hopefully news is going to start rolling in here as the combine has started and people are going to start leaking things drunk in hotel bars. It's my favorite tradition of the year. So we'll start to see rumors and stuff and, people leaking things. And we'll talk about it as it comes. Otherwise, we'll keep going on some draft guys too. I'll see y'all next time. And as always, Skull.